The product backlog, importantly, is for a product, not a project. A product itself is a vehicle to deliver value. And whilst that may seem like a vague definition, and it certainly is, the important part is that the Scrum team working on the product understand the boundaries of it, including the stakeholders and users. A project, on the other hand, can be a short or long-term effort, but it is likely across multiple themes. Products focus on outcomes, whereas projects often focus on outputs. The product backlog is one of the 3 artifacts in Scrum, and it is the single source of work for all of the development of the product. It is described as transparent, ordered, and living. Importantly, it is emergent, meaning that it continually evolves and changes as more is learnt about the product itself, the market it lives within, and the Scrum process. It is not fully defined up front. It maintains an order determined by the product owner of what is needed to move the product forwards towards the product goal. Contained within the product backlog are likely to be many product backlog items. These are individual, independent expressions of requirements, the source of which can be from stakeholders, users, the market, or the developers themselves. Any source that provides a description, i.e. what is required, an order, for example, a place within the product backlog, and a size, a relative amount of effort or complexity that we are required to invest to complete it. Product backlog items can be ordered by the product owner using many techniques. Risk, impacts, cost, value, priority. Absolutely any way at all is perfectly okay. The most important thing is that the technique used to order the product backlog is transparent and understood. Now, when I say that product backlog items contain a description, an order, and a size, this isn't always true from when they are immediately created. Sometimes there are simple sentences requiring further investigations, and that's okay. What we typically see, though, is product backlog items are better refined and understood as they move towards the top of the product backlog, as it is likely they will soon be incorporated into a sprint backlog, with less well understood product backlog items lower in the product backlog. The idea and act of improving the readiness of these product backlog items is called refinement. It is a commonly misunderstood part of the Scrum framework that there is an event called product backlog refinement. There isn't. The reason it is not an event in its own right is because it does not happen in one single time-boxed opportunity. It is an ongoing activity to be completed as needed by the Scrum team. This act of refinement is vital for the success of a Scrum team, particularly the developers, so that they can understand what they need to do to satisfy the value request of the stakeholders. Vitally, product backlog items are considered ready for selection in a sprint planning event when the developers are confident they can be turned to done, meaning they meet the definition of done within one sprint. Refinement as an activity is a collaborative effort between the whole Scrum team. However, whilst the product owner is accountable for providing the transparency to improve the understanding of each product backlog item in the form of the description, it is the developers who decide the sizing of the work. Sizing product backlog items is important. It helps to influence the product owner with their ordering decisions. Perhaps a small but less important product backlog item is really small and could be a quick win, but a large, important item could take 2 months. There are many techniques in how to size, but the important thing to remember is that technique is up to you as the Scrum team. All the Scrum Guide says is that product backlog items must be sized. We should be confident they can be completed and meet the definition of done within one sprint. You may have come across sizing techniques such as story points with planning poker, comparative bucket sizing, ideal person hours, for example. Remember that you choose the technique that is appropriate to you and increases transparency. Something to remember with sizing is that the sizes are not comparable from one team to another. For example, if your team sized one product backlog item at 3 using story points, another Scrum team may size the same product backlog item at an 8, or call it an elephant, an extra large t-shirt. Different techniques are not comparable. Sizing helps in 2 ways. The first one I already mentioned, to influence the ordering of the product backlog. But secondly, it helps with capacity planning during sprint planning for the developers to be able to make more informed forecasts. How much can they fit into a sprint? One final thing to note on sizing is the idea of using velocity to make these informed forecasts in sprint planning. Velocity is a common metric that uses sizes to forecast how much work can be done in a sprint, i.e. last sprint we completed 45 points. Please never compare teams' velocities for the reasons I've already shared, but also remember that velocity does not equate to value. The velocity of a team may be high, but there is no guarantee any of what they have delivered is of use to a stakeholder. I can tell you right now, A stakeholder would rather one thing that they actually asked for than 10 things that they didn't. Now, I've spoken a lot about the product backlog and what it contains, but what I haven't mentioned is what it is trying to achieve. I've mentioned that it is the single source of work for the product. However, perhaps a better phrase is that it is a single source of work to achieve the product goal. In Scrum, we describe the product goal as the commitment to the product backlog, and there is only one product goal at one time, and it must be achieved or abandoned before moving on to the next one. The product owner defines the product goal, but how big a product goal is up to the product owner and the Scrum team. However, they should be aspirational and importantly measurable so that you know when it has been achieved. An example of a product goal might be something like customers are able to purchase a book on our website in under 1 minute. This could be a strategic step towards an overall complementary vision, which might be to be the largest online bookseller in the UK. The product backlog items contained within the product backlog are ordered to achieve this product goal. This certainly doesn't mean that work that does not directly contribute towards the product goal can't be contained in the product backlog, but the overwhelming commitment and focus of the product backlog is the product goal. As the Scrum Guide describes it, the product goal is a future state of the product you are trying to build, and it serves as a target for the Scrum team to plan against. Hopefully you can see the benefits of having a product goal. I've worked on plenty of teams who develop products with no clear aim, and the phrase headless chickens comes to mind. If you have a product goal, the product backlog will emerge to solve that problem. The takeaways here are that a product goal creates purpose, coherence, and focus for a Scrum team and a product. Allow the next strategic step to be defined in the form of a product goal and let the product backlog grow as needed. Scrum Masters should coach their product owners how to do this effectively, reminding them that the product backlog may be a single source of work, but if they're never going to do that thing, then it doesn't belong in the product backlog. Let's try a small activity now. I want you to imagine that you are working in a team that is focused on achieving the product goal I mentioned earlier. Customers are able to purchase a book on our website in under 1 minute. Write a list of 5 or more independent product backlog items that may be needed in order to achieve this. Pause the video now. This activity is interesting because every single person will do it differently, and that is absolutely okay. A product backlog, whilst focused on a product goal and the individual product, will be expressed differently by different teams of people. For me, some of the product backlog items I might have chosen would be 3 different payment methods are available. Customers can filter based on a book's genre, or maybe even having a one-click purchase option. All of those product backlog items are independent, purposeful, and needed to meet the product goal. And that's the wrap up here. A product backlog emerges to meet the product goal set by the product owner. The product owner collaborates with the developers and stakeholders on exactly what is needed to be done. And those requirements are turned into usable increments every sprint.